Um, so welcome to the Goblins versus Gnome card review with Du, part number 3, I believe it now is. And we're just going to be going over some more of the released cards for Goblins versus Gnomes that are going to be coming out sometime soon. So we're going to start out on this page and then move over to another one once I run out of new cards on this page. So let's just dive right in. Where we left off last time was with the Whirling Zap-O-Matic. So I guess we'll pick up this time with the Dunmal Shaman. He's a 4-mana Shaman unique class card, who is a 5/4 with Wind Fury, Overload 1, and a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. He seems like an interesting card to me, because, first of all, he's got good stats for his mana cost. He has Overload, which can be helpful for Shamans in triggering, Unbound Elemental. And he has Wind Fury. So in a 5/4, a card that already has good stats for its mana cost, having Wind Fury as well is pretty ridiculous. The problem comes in with his text of having a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. Now, we do see this text on one other card, which is the Ogre Warmaul, a unique warrior class weapon. A 4/2 weapon that costs 3 with the same text. The thing there is that the stats on the Ogre Warmaul are far better than any other weapon that costs the same amount of mana. And on top of that, hitting the wrong enemy with a weapon usually isn't that big of a problem because you're still likely to kill off whatever you hit. And you're only taking damage to your face, which you would have taken anyway, and you have a lot of health. So when you're using health as a resource with weapons, as long as you're clearing off some minion, getting that kind of crazy value out of that Warmaul isn't really that bad of a thing. With the Dunmal Shaman, though, he has a limited amount of health. In fact, just 4. And so even though he has Wind Fury, you can't always maximize this potential because he has a chance to just, on first attack, trade even with a Yeti. And that's not really what you want in a card that has Overload 1. Something that just traded with a Yeti and nothing more. Now he does have higher value potential to trade with, you know, better minions if you could buff his health, or just dealing insane amounts of damage to the opponent's face, especially if their board is clear. But at that point, if your opponent's board is clear and this guy doesn't have a wrong enemy to attack, it's just going to end up being a win more card because you've already attained board control as Shaman, and from there you really have a hard time losing. So this card has potential, but on the other hand, I feel like the text of having a 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy on this particular minion, with its rather low health stat, for a 4-mana cost card, is just going to make it so that it's not going to be that useful. Yeah, you technically have a chance to hit the wrong enemy, where you attack an enemy minion with taunt, the effect, or the text triggers, and then you hit them in the face instead, or kind of a cheat pass taunt sort of play, but I don't know. I mean, having the limited health that he does, I just don't feel this guy was going to be that great and constructed. There's other minions with Wind Fury to run which are better. So, I mean, if you're looking for high damage with Wind Fury, just go with the Whirling Zap-O-Matic. You don't need something that isn't reliable and which is likely to die if the text ever triggers and bites you. The Warmaul's not going to typically kill you if it hits the wrong enemy. If it is, then you probably shouldn't have been attacking with it in the first place. So, is the Dunmal Shaman potentially good? I guess so. You know, it is Shaman. You could potentially dish out massive amounts of damage with this guy. I mean, him alone will have the potential to deal 16 damage on turn 5, given that you only have a Rock Biter and your opponent's board is clear, but again, how often is that going to happen? So even though he's got high value potential, realistically, I'm not sure he's really going to be that valuable at all. So, I don't know. He's a card to watch, but I'm tempted to say he's not that great and therefore won't be ran, especially in Constructed. In Arena, maybe he'll make things interesting, but in Constructed, I don't really see this card being viable because of its low health stat and lack of reliability. I don't know. That's just my thoughts, though. Next we have the Ogre Ninja, a rogue unique class minion. He is a 5 mana cost 6/6 with stealth. Here we do see an example of exceptional stats for the mana cost, which somewhat helps the Ogre Ninja to make up for the fact that he again has that text 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy. He does come into play with stealth too, so at the very least, this guy is similar to a 5 mana fireball, which doesn't always hit the right target. His 6 health, though, means that if he does attack the wrong enemy, he's not that likely to actually kill himself, because not a lot of things have 6+ attack, especially in Constructed. Most things are 5 attack or less. There are exceptions, you know, Ragnaros, High Mains, there's plenty of exceptions, but typically speaking, or not typically speaking, generally speaking, he's going to survive if he hits the wrong minion. On top of that, the text of 50% chance to attack the wrong enemy does mean he has that same potential to make it through taunt. I mean, he's really just a better tiger. To me, at least. Yeah, he can attack the wrong enemy, but with health like that, hitting the wrong enemy isn't liable to get him killed off, so I don't know. I think he's definitely better than our little Dunmal Shaman, but how good will he be in competitive play? I don't know, because again, that random text makes cards unreliable is just so hard to get past. So, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how great this guy will be. He'll certainly shake things up in Arena, though, just as an interesting minion since he's got such good stats for his mana cost. Moving on, we have Sabotage, a rogue unique spell. It is also an epic, which is interesting. It costs 4 mana, and you get to destroy a random enemy minion. If you combo it, you also get to destroy your opponent's weapon. Feels like a kind of worse version of Assassinate, but given the large number of weapons that are being released, perhaps weapons are actually going to become a very dangerous thing in the new meta, and if that's the case, having that combo text will make this card a lot better, so it's possible that this will see competitive play. Especially because you can kind of bypass that randomness by saving this for large minions that your opponent drops unguarded, like Ragnaros, Ysera, Tyrion, things like that. A note, since we just touched on Tyrion, with the combo effect, since that combo of destroying your opponent's weapon happens when you play Sabotage, it's not like a sequence of go destroy something and then afterward check for a weapon, and if there is one, destroy it. If this card kills off Tyrion, and its combo is triggered, it will not destroy Ashbringer, because the death rattle triggers after Tyrion dies, but this is put into play and both of its effects of destroy the minion and destroy a weapon go off at the same time. So it would kill Tyrion, look for a weapon to kill and find nothing, then Tyrion's death rattle would go off and give your opponent Ashbringer. So this will not destroy Ashbringer. But still, a cheaper version of Assassinate, albeit more random, I don't know. Maybe the fact that it's cheaper will make it more valuable because, again, you could play around having this in your deck by killing off certain minions so it's got a really good chance to kill off the minion you want it to kill. And on top of that, if, you know, your opponent drops some high-value minion turn 4 like a Yeti or any of the good 4 mana cost minions that we've been seeing from Goblins versus Gnomes, maybe this card can just be used to kill those off. And the weapon destroying aspect of it is pretty sweet. So, I don't know. Maybe this will be run competitively. In Arena, certainly something that'll be nice, but what do I really even care about Arena? I only do Constructed. Next up, we've already been over Anti-Keelbot and the Burly Rockjaw Trog. So we have a Hunter unique spell. It costs 2 mana with the text of trigger all death rattles on your minions. This seems somewhat crazy because Hunter Death Rattle is already a deck. There are mechs with Death Rattle which are being introduced, which only makes this better. And on top of that, it only triggers your own minion's Death Rattles. It does not trigger opponent minion Death Rattles. So it's solely going to benefit you. Used with things like Nerubian Egg, even, Harvest Golem, it's a good card. The problem comes from the fact that you're going to be getting the most value out of this card when you have a ton of Death Rattle minions on the board. And realistically, you're not going to be getting tons upon tons of Death Rattle minions. If you already have a board that's just full of minions whose Death Rattles haven't been triggered yet, so a bunch of Death Rattle minions, say in their first forms, you got a Nerubian Egg, a Harvest Golem, and why not, we'll say, a Haunted Creeper. They're all sitting on the board and none of them have even changed form yet. You're probably already in a really solid winning position as a hunter. And so triggering those is just helping you win more. So yeah, this card's got a lot of crazy potential, especially with high main, but realistically, is it going to be a game-changing card that puts you in a winning spot, or is it just going to be a win more card? I don't know. Which will be interesting to watch. But, I really don't know. I don't know. This thing will certainly, if Hunter Death Rattle continues to be a thing, though, I'm sure this will be ran. It's just got too much value potential for only 2 mana to not be ran. So, we'll see. I don't know if this is OP and great. Another OP card for Hunters. They're just going to wreck. Untard. Good job, Blizzard. Or, if it's like Bloodlust is for Shamans. Where it's like, maybe you could run it, but it's just so much more of a win more card that most decks won't. So we'll see. Next up is the Little Exorcist, a 3-mana 2/3 with Taunt, basically Tarn Warrior, but without the Enrage. So pretty poor stats for its mana cost, but it does have a Battle Cry of gain +1/+1 for each enemy Death Rattle minion. Honestly, I don't think this is a good card. The reason being, for it to really start being valuable for its mana cost, your opponent should have probably 2 Death Rattle minions on the board. And if you're dropping this onto a board with 2 Death Rattle minions, your opponent's in a pretty good spot. Especially because, the majority of Death Rattle minions that I foresee being ran are going to have 2 bodies. One that's their initial one with a Death Rattle, and the second being whatever gets summoned when that minion dies. So, dropping a Little Exorcist into that is not the best thing, because great, your opponent will just use the first form of both of those Death Rattle minions to take out the Exorcist, and then it's got second form of both Death Rattle minions sitting on the board, and the Exorcist has done nothing for that. So, this card is at worst a Tarn Warrior, and at best just a possible clear for the first form of your opponent's Death Rattle minion. So, to me, this sucks. Especially if you end up in a matchup against a deck that doesn't run Death Rattles. Go play against Handlock, this thing is garbage. You might as well, polymorph it into a chicken off of a card draw. So, yeah, this is not a good card. But, again, some of the cards Blizzard adds will be dead cards, so oh well. Next up is a Paladin unique minion called Scarlet Purifier, a 3-mana 4/3. So he's already got good stats for his mana cost, which is good. And he has a Battle Cry of deal 2 damage to all minions with Death Rattle. This is all, so it does mean your own. I feel like this is the far better card against Death Rattle style decks, like Zoo and, Death Rattle Hunter. But again, it is Paladin unique, so it's not like everyone's going to be running a Scarlet Purifier over a Little Exorcist. Little Exorcist is just unplayable. This is actually playable because the stats are decent, even if you're not up against a Death Rattle deck. On top of that, if you synergize this card with some of your own Death Rattle minions like Explosive Sheep and Nerubian Egg, you can actually get a lot of value out of this card just by, you know, summoning now a 4/4 Nerubian, which will take 2 damage off of an Explosive Sheep if you have both the Nerubian Egg and the Sheep on board, although I don't know why you'd do those both at once. This thing could give you Nerubians, it could blow up Explosive Sheep, so that you get a 4 damage board wipe to all Death Rattle minions and 2 damage to all non-Death Rattle minions. This thing survives that, so it'd still be a 4/1. I think it's got potential. But, yeah, I don't know. Because again, unless you're going to run a Paladin deck with Death Rattle minions itself, which can combo with this guy, he will be a little bit lackluster against decks that don't run a ton of Death Rattle minions. So I think this is a potentially good card, and it's one to watch and one to experiment with. So I think there's a deck that runs this that'll be pretty good out there, but I have no clue what it is. So Scarlet Purifier, I think this is good design on Blizzard's part, and I want to see it run in competitive play because it just seems good to me. Don't know. Next up we have the Steam Weedle Sniper, a Hunter unique minion that is a 2 mana cost 2/3 with the text, "Your hero power can target minions." Well, here we go again with Blizzard making cards that just at a glance appear to be stupid good. Let's make Huntard a thing again. Blizzard not thinking, GG, yada yada. Looking into the text more carefully, though, I mean, yes, this gives Hunters a pretty crazy hero power in that they're able to deal 2 damage to whatever they want. But this guy's basically an Alchemy Soul Priest. Hunter doesn't run healing anyway, so I mean, the fact that Alchemy turns off a priest's ability to heal really puts it in the same class as Steam Weedle, because Hunters don't heal anyway. And on top of that, you know, with Alchemy Soul Priest, Priest's hero power just becomes deal 2 damage. Same as this thing. The difference comes in the fact that Alchemy, while it is later to be played, and therefore maybe ends up having the Priest's hero power deal 2 damage to stronger minions, whereas this could be used to have Hunter's hero power kill off smaller minions instead. This suffers stat value as a cost, so he's pretty easy to remove. He's not a super threatening minion alone, whereas Alchemy has pretty good stats for a 4 mana cost minion anyway. So I don't know. The other thing to think about, because even though this does seem pretty crazy because he represents 4 damage per turn thrown at any source of a Hunter's choice, the other thing to consider, and I am going to switch tabs here for this, and actually, let's I'm going to move this so that I can get these cards away from the overlay. There we go. Let's go down to Hunter class cards. The other thing to consider with Hunter's class minions like the Sniper is that none of these really synergize. I mean, Feign Death triggers the Death Rattle on all your minions, but nothing here has Death Rattles. The Steam Weedle Sniper, while he has good text, is not a mech. He does not have a Death Rattle. He is not a beast. He's just a regular old minion that's a 2/3 with decent text. Or more than decent, good text. Call Pet is draw a card if it's a beast, it costs 4 or less, but these two aren't beasts, and Gazrilla, I've already been over why I don't think he's the best card in Constructed. You know, he just gets answered pretty easily by things like Shadow or Death, Hex, Polymorph, you name it. While all of these cards seem really good individually, they don't really work that well together, and aside from the Call Pet Gazrilla synergy, there's nothing. There's no synergy between these minions. Or any of these cards, for that matter. So, sure, each of these cards looks pretty good on its own, but you can't stick them all together in a deck. They don't work that way. They just don't work together, so I don't know. I'm not going to say that any of these Hunter cards is just game-breaking and stupidly good and overpowered, and Blizzard is a group of monkeys on a keyboard for designing these and releasing them, and that they're just pitying people who lost Buzzard. I'm not going to go that far, because even though all of these are good cards alone, together they don't work. So, you gotta kind of choose as a Hunter which one of these, or which two of these, perhaps, do you want to be running? You want a Beast deck that runs Callpet and Gazrilla? Okay, sure, go for it. You want a Death Rattle deck that runs Feign Death? Okay, maybe you can sneak Steam Weedle Sniper in there. Maybe you could sneak Callpet in there, because there are some beasts with Death Rattles, but there's just no synergies. So, do I think Hunter is stupid good because a lot of these Hunter cards seem above average? I don't really think so. Yeah, they're good, but no synergy, man. Beyond that, we now have to use this page exclusively to look at some of the other new cards. Let's go find anything new. There are none of them in neutral minions, as of today at least. I'm thinking that they're not releasing any new spare parts. I'm pretty sure this is all of them. So, we'll go with that. There is a new Druid class unique minion, and I want to point out that Druid's gotten all minions so far, which is really interesting. Maybe Blizzard's just too scared after their last attempt to design a new Druid spell with poison seeds, but we're getting all minions. So Druid of the Fang is a 5-mana 4/4 with a battle cry of, if you have a beast, transform this minion into a 7/7. This does mean Druid of the Fang, not the beast, Druid of the Fang. And neither of these two mechs count as beasts, to my knowledge. I've never seen a dual minion type minion. So Druid of the Fang doesn't synergize with... Druid of the Fang does not synergize with both of Druid's new class minions. And on top of that, Druid isn't super beast heavy anyway. I mean, sure, Druids can run Yetis, and you can run Druid of the Claw. And, you know, regardless of which form the Druid of the Claw takes, he does then, after that, count as a beast. But Druid isn't a beast-heavy class. And while a 5-mana 7/7 is certainly enticing, especially in a non-legendary card, trying to build a beast Druid deck just seems kind of stretching it. So, I don't think Druid of the Fang is stupidly good as just a, oh great, here's a Druid minion that's now a 5-mana 7/7, and we thought Druid of the Claw was bad. Now there's Druid of the Fang, thanks Blizzard. I don't really think so. Maybe he's got potential, but so far I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that a Beast Druid would be that good, and that's where Druid of the Fang would do best. So, I mean, oh well. Maybe it'll be a thing now because this card is just so good in that kind of a deck that it makes it worth it to run, but I don't think so. I think Druid of the Fang is just kind of a dud. He had a lot of potential, but it didn't fit in the class he was given to. If this were a Hunter card, sure, I'd be griping, because now you get all the synergies in the world with Callpet, Gazrilla, and Druid of the Fang. But in a Druid deck, I'm not so sure about how good Druid of the Fang would really be. In Arena, he might be pretty good, because again, you grab one while you're picking up cards early, and you can just start, you know, picking off beast minions from there if they're decent. And then you just get this crazy value minion that isn't that likely to be answered by your opponent because it's Arena. So, while a good Arena card constructed, I don't see him making that big a splash. Nothing new for mages, we already went over the new paladin stuff. Nothing new for priests. But shamans now have a card called Crackle. It is a 2-mana spell that deals 3 to 6 damage, and it has a text of Overload 1. This card is very interesting because it's just got so much random potential. I mean, it'll obviously average 4.5 damage, so either 4 or 5 damage is the average, and it'll switch between them, but this card, because it is so random, it could be potentially, you know, a completely superior card to Lava Burst, which is a 3-mana, deal 5 damage, Overload 2 spell. And there's a reason Shamans don't run that, which is because the Overload 2 is brutal, and the deal 5 damage for 3 mana, while okay, comboed with the Overload is just too taxing. So Crackle has the potential to just absolutely blow that card out of the water with its damage value. But on the other hand, it also has the potential to be a 2-mana Lightning Bolt with the same Overload effect. So the fact that it has potential to have insane value is kind of balanced by the fact that it also has the potential to not have insane value, and the sheer randomness of it causes Shaman players to kind of play around it. And I'm not sure exactly how this will be done, if it'll be try to play it so that, you know, all that's required is 3, but dealing more is always good. And, you know, swing minions in so something's got 3 health and then use this. I doubt that's the right play. I think you would use this first and then see what the results are before you do anything. Same way you play Lightning Storm. But the randomness of the card makes it potentially brilliant as a 2-mana Fireball. Or also potentially rather crap as a 2-mana Frostbolt / Lightning Bolt that's just overloading for 1. So no matter how you slice it, if this thing deals 3, you did not get good value out of it. Now again, Shamans have plenty of spell damage and ways to give it. You've got Azure Drakes, which are common. You've got your spell damage totem. But I really want to watch Crackle to see what happens with it, because it's got really high value potential, it's got absolute crap for value potential, so will it make a splash in Constructed? I don't know. Is the potential for crazy value so good that the potential for not so crazy value is suddenly worth it? Or, what? Answers, I don't know. I'm going to be definitely watching Crackle, though, because it seems like an interesting and potentially great card. And I guess last for today is Fellheart, a Warlock unique spell. It costs 5 mana. It has the text, deal 5 damage to a minion. If it's a friendly demon, give it +5/+5 instead. So, basically a stronger version of Demon Fire. But is the fact that it is so much stronger actually going to make it worth running? Because 5 mana for 5 damage, now we're going to Starfire and Starfall territory. Starfall is kind of redeemed for that 1 mana for 1 damage value by the fact that it can also be used as a board wipe of sorts. And, of course, Fellheart does not have that option, but there already exists a mid-range shaman, or not shaman, a mid-range warlock demon deck that, you know, works off of Void Caller and such cards as Dread Infernal and Doomguard and Jiraxis. So it just runs, you know, pretty crazy demon minions and basically banks on outvaluing your opponent, because you're probably going to end up playing a few demons that'll bite you in the butt, and you'll probably end up cheating a few out with Void Caller. But would Fellheart work in a deck like that? Because in Handlock, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, just run your Soulfires instead, so much more value. And even Shadow Bolt, you know, more value, better alternative. And in Zoo, please, just run a minion. Run a minion instead. You don't need to be shooting 5 damage at minions anyway in Zoo. It's about going face, and while you are trying to keep the board clear, I mean, you're using your minions for that. Go grab something that heals them, you know? Grab a Darkscale healer over Fellheart and Zoo. So, is Fellheart a great card? I wouldn't venture so far as to say it's great, but could it make mid-range Warlock a thing? I really don't know, because again, it does only deal 5 damage to a minion. You can't shoot it at face. And I feel like if you could, that might make it a bit better. That might make it, viable to run in a mid-range Warlock kind of deck. Because it gives you burst potential or buff potential, or just deal 5 damage if you really need to get that minion out of my face potential. But it can't be used to shoot at someone's face. So, I don't know. Again, the stat boost to it too in a mid-range Warlock deck is comparable to Blessing of Kings in Paladin decks, and that is run. But I don't know. I really don't know about Fellheart. This is one of those cards to watch, but I feel like it's on more of the dud side than on the this is probably going to be a good card side, so I don't know. I'll watch it, but I will not be surprised if it just kind of falls to pieces. And to date, that's basically it for all of the new minions. There's nothing else new yet, but hey, they keep releasing new things every day, so we'll see. I still feel like a Death Rattle mech deck is just going to absolutely take things by storm until people figure out how to play around it, because there are Death Rattle mechs, and the synergies that exist for both Death Rattle minions and mech minions, regardless of class, are just pretty crazy all around, so Death Rattle mech mage certainly is a possibility. Death Rattle mech hunter, I could see it happening, but I mean, it would really only run Feign Death. There wouldn't be most of the other stereotypical hunter cards. You certainly wouldn't have room for things like High Main because, well, I don't know, maybe you would run High Main because of it being having a Death Rattle and being so great, but certainly not Call Pet because you're working around Death Rattles anyway, and you're using mechs and beasts interchangeably and all that stuff, so that's certainly a possibility. I want to see what Paladin does with these cards for sure. Yeah. Paladin seems like it's got potential with the Scarlet Purifier. Everything else just seems kind of like a dud to me in the Paladin class. The Cog Hammer just comes out a turn too late, and giving a friendly minion Divine Shield and Taunt. I mean, if you need to be clearing off your opponent's minions, chances are they're starting to interact with your own minions, and there's not going to be a great target for that battle cry. So if you're playing Cog Hammer on curve, you're giving a 2-mana minion Divine Shield and Taunt, which isn't amazing. And if you're playing it off curve, the weapon itself is useless. So why are you giving something Divine Shield and Taunt? I guess you could run it with Ancient Watcher to make a Sunwalker, basically, but Cog Hammer seems kind of like a dud, and I've already gone over why both of these are not that great in Constructed. The Scarlet Purifier's got potential. In Constructed, Shrinkmeister is the only priest card I see having potential, and he's got a lot of it. The upgraded Repair Bot, there's just not enough incentive to run a mech priest. Rogues, mech rogue could be a thing. I mean, these are certainly two great mech cards. As for Shaman, is mech Shaman a thing? Don't really know. The Whirling Zap-O-Matic's crazy, but it's crazy enough on its own to not need to be run in a mech deck, so do we really need a mech Shaman? Not really, just run Whirling Zap-O-Matic. It's good on its own. Crackle, got potential. Warlock, I don't know what this is doing, honestly. I need to see more Warlock cards because off of this alone, Warlock doesn't seem like it's doing a bunch of new stuff. It just seems like it's going to be pumping Zoo with the new Death Rattle mechs and figuring out ways to go smash face with new stupidly powerful cards, and these cards won't really matter. And then Warrior got a new good weapon, got Bouncing Blade for an execute trigger, which is great. As for these two, Mech Warrior doesn't have enough incentive to be ran, so the Clunker's not that great, and Shield Maiden, I mean, sure, it's a 5/5 that gives you 5 armor, but Shield Block is just used instead because it draws you a card and it does the same gain 5 armor thing for less, so there's better minions you could be running if you're playing Control Warrior for 6 mana, and if you're running Mid-Range Warrior, maybe this has a place, but Mid-Range Warrior has traditionally not been great up to this point. As for Aggro Warrior, it hasn't been strong enough to get past Aggro Hunters and Mages and Warlocks, so Shield Maiden certainly wouldn't even work there, so... I don't know. We'll see. We'll certainly see what happens. But, that's it for the card review for, these new cards, guys, and hope you enjoyed, and, if not, tell me why you didn't enjoy it. Just leave a comment or something, or, yeah, you know what to do. Alright. See you guys in the next one.